This is Holy Trinity, Anglican Church, Vancouver. In 2013, on a flight from Brazil, Pope Francis said to reporters, "Who am I to judge?" That question chimes with the fact that Matthew 7:1 is reportedly the best-known Bible verse nowadays. Judge not, that ye be not judged. Yet that is what Jeremiah was known for, big time. Judging and judgment. Perhaps that was why he was far from universally popular in his day. The question is, how receptive are we in the here and now to his message of judgment? Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 2. I remember the devotion of your youth. When someone starts off that way, can't you just feel that there's going to be a sting in the tail? He used to be ... I remember many things from my youth, back when, in the words of the psalmist, I was young and lusty as an eagle. Ian does me the kindness of saying that I've matured like a fine port, or perhaps it's a smelly cheese. But what I am aware of is the excitement of back when I was young in the faith, when I could hardly wait for Sunday to come around and the opportunity to go to church, morning and evening. Everything was new and to be discovered, new hymns to experience and learn. John writes to the church at Ephesus, "You have forsaken your first love." Israel, at the time of Jeremiah, 600 years before Christ, had forsaken their first love, their love of God and his ways. What about you? Do you still have the devotion to God of your youth? Does it need to be revived? Verse 7. I brought you into a fertile land to eat its fruit and rich produce. But you came and defiled my land and made my inheritance detestable. Summertime and the living is easy. It is ironic, but it's when things are going well that we are perhaps most tempted to err and stray like lost sheep, to follow too much the devices and desires of our own hearts. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the arms to rest. It's also ironic that the nicest of places can bring forth the worst in human nature. What a beautiful place we live in, and aren't we beautiful to boot? Whereas workaday places and folk are perhaps not as full of themselves and their own achievements. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16:18. The Israelites had been brought into a fertile land to eat its fruit and rich produce, yet they had forsaken the one who had brought them there, God. You came and defiled my land and made my inheritance detestable. They forgot what the Lord had done for them. Verse 6. They did not ask, "Where is the Lord who brought us out of Egypt and led us through the barren wilderness?" How quickly we forget what God has done for us, his past mercies and blessings. Father, hear the prayer we offer, not for ease that prayer shall be, but for strength that we may ever live our lives courageously. Verse 11. Has a nation ever changed its gods? Yet they are not gods at all. But my people have exchanged their glory for worthless idols. In verse 13, my people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. I can claim to have been inside a broken cistern that cannot hold water. Indeed, it was because it could not hold water that I was able to go inside it. It was at Papplewick pumping station in Nottinghamshire. Wikipedia describes the cistern there as a huge brick-vaulted structure. It was built in 1880, but decommissioned in 1906, owing to a crack in one of its walls. Now, the cistern at Papplewick remained impressive, perhaps all the more so in its decommissioned state, as this meant that the likes of me were actually able to go inside it. But for its intended purpose, supplying living water to the people of Nottingham, it was about as much use as a pub without beer. It served only as a tourist attraction and as testimony to human hubris. Pride of man and earthly glory, sword and crown betray man's trust. What with care and toil he buildeth, tower and temple, fall to dust. But God's power, hour by hour, is my temple and my tower. Miles Quick, being a musician, claims that people remember hymns rather than sermons. But I can remember a sermon that I heard back in the late 1980s. It was by the Canon Missioner of Birmingham Diocese at the evening service at St. Stephen's, Selly Hill. How's that for memory? Just don't ask me the missioner's name. A point I remember from the sermon was to do with tinkering with cars. The preacher said that you can change this, that, and the other, and it still remains a car. But there comes a point when you've changed so much that the car is no longer able to fulfill its purpose, getting you from A to B. It might still look like a car on the outside, but in practice, it scored nil point in that department. That's what can happen in society, in the church, in our own lives. It's a case of little by little, a gradual erosion, incremental change, and we can end up with something that may look okay on the outside. It still has the outward form of what it should be, what God intends, but actually it's being gutted internally. Jesus said of the teachers of the law and Pharisees, quoting Isaiah, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." Matthew 15:8. You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones. Matthew 23:27. On the back of today's bulletin, there's a quotation from John Stott. No comment could be more harmful to the Christian than the words, "But you are no different from anybody else," how much we may want to fit in with those around us. We come to terms with the non-Christian world. We won't trouble it if it doesn't trouble us. If we're not careful, we can end up with, to paraphrase Dietrich Bonhoeffer, an outward form of religion, but one without discipleship, without the cross, and ultimately without Jesus Christ. We end up exchanging the truth of God for a lie, worshipping and serving things rather than the Creator. Yet, such objects of devotion are ultimately worthless. From Psalm 115. Why do the nations say, "Where is their God?" Our God is in heaven. He does whatever pleases him. But their idols are silver and gold, made by the hands of men. They have mouths, but cannot speak, eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but cannot hear. Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech thee, give us that due sense of all thy mercies, that our hearts may be unfeignedly thankful, and that we show forth thy praise, not only with our lips, but in our lives, by giving up ourselves to thy service, and by walking before thee in holiness and righteousness all our days. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.